Star Wars Resistance was released back in 2018 and lasted for 2 seasons on the Disney Channel and follows the story of Kaz Ziono, the son of a diplomat in the New Republic who is also a skilled fighter pilot who finds himself getting involved with the Resistance and goes undercover for them at a base where he meets several new friends along the way and does various missions for the Resistance. Star Wars Resistance is the third animated series to be brought to us by Dave Filoni. Even though he didn't work on this show as much as he did the Clone Wars and Resistance, his fingerprints are still all over this. He created the initial concept for the show, but sadly had to move on to finish the Clone Wars final season. So what we get here is a show that has a great concept and is overall a pretty solid show, but is missing a few key components that I think made the Clone Wars and Rebels so much more compelling. That's not to say that this show is bad. In fact, I am so infuriated by many Star Wars fans that really bashed this show upon its initial release, upon when the trailers were first released for this show. It came out just at the time when Star Wars fans were completely split with the fandom because of The Last Jedi really splitting everybody so much, and there was so much Star Wars, Disney, and Kathleen Kennedy hate that it just got out of hand, and people were completely bashing the show without even really seeing it, or just not even willing to give it a chance. I mean, look on IMDb, the score is like a 4.8, but if you look at the actual ratings for each episode, they do range a little bit higher. Still, I think they're a little too low, but overall, guys, is this show worth all the hate that it got when it was initially coming out? Heck no. This is not an amazing show. There's a lot of problems that I do have with it, but it is not worth the hate. It is a perfectly fine, serviceable show that is made for younger children, young kids. I mean, I'm not really the target audience for this, but sitting down, watching it, I still enjoyed myself for the most part, but I can say it's not anything spectacular. Now, the one thing I did love about this show in particular was the voice cast. Christopher Sean as Kaz is so energetic, lovable, and so much fun to listen to, and I really like the character of Kaz himself. He is a headstrong kid that is also just a complete klutz, and that makes him really fun and enjoyable to watch. I also like a lot of the other side characters, such as Yeager and especially Tam, who I think honestly is the most interesting character through the show, and is the one character that really has a great character arc, as she starts out as this mechanic that feels that she's been lied to, joins the First Order, and along the way she sees the violence and the evil that the First Order is. She doesn't particularly like the Resistance, and it's just really compelling stuff that I think really does work for this show. So yeah, overall, I really like the voice cast here. They do an excellent job, and sometimes they even get actors from the sequel trilogy to come in, such as Oscar Isaac as Poe Dameron, but then other times they use other voice actors that at least sound a little bit like the characters, like they do with General Hux and also with Kylo Ren, which the Kylo Ren voice actor, he does an admirable job, but he just sounds really off to me in that second season. But overall, I still think voice acting is pretty solid, pretty great. And also, let's talk about the animation here. Now, this has been a very controversial thing, honestly. The animation has not been particularly praised for the show, but I'm not a huge fan of it, but it did grow on me as I watched it. It is a cel-shaded show that is 3D animated, and honestly, I really like the colors and the shading. I think it makes the characters just pop off the screen a little bit. And the whole idea was that it was supposed to mimic anime in a lot of ways. And I don't particularly see it. I get what they mean by like the shading and stuff, and the original concept of the show was to make it more like anime, but honestly, I can't watch this show and not think of Handy Mandy. You know, that Playhouse Disney show? But anyway, the animation, it did grow on me. I think what's best, though, isn't necessarily the character models, but the stuff to do with, like, the X-Wings. That stuff is honestly beautiful to look at, and I really did like that. And overall, I like the whole concept of the show. Dave Filoni created the show as a kind of to focus on something that was very personal to him. His grandfather had been I'm guessing a fighter pilot, or was in the Navy in World War II. And the focus of the show is kind of what Dave Filoni wanted to focus on with what his grandfather had to deal with, basically being on a ship or a station for such a long time, just goofing around, talking, hanging out before they had to go on their next mission. And so the show really has this laid back quality to it that I do really like, but it doesn't make for compelling television, honestly. In fact, the first season really lacks any kind of momentum, and it just feels like we're going through the motions, and it feels extremely slow at times. It isn't until season 2 that the series really picks up, as our characters are now on the run from the First Order and they go from planet to planet. That stuff is a lot of fun and much more complex, but I think the idea itself is very admirable. I just don't think it works out in the show's favor. Also, the comedy for the show is very childish at times. It is hit or miss. A lot of people aren't really going to enjoy it, but it is made for young kids, so I can see young kids kind of liking this and being more into it than a 25-year-old man is going to be. But overall, I think it's not particularly terrible in the comedy. It's just not my type of comedy. And even though I wasn't ever particularly invested in this show, I still had my moments where I did genuinely enjoy it, especially in the second season, where I think it really kicks into high gear and we get some really great episodes. And the finale, I really loved the final 2 or 3 episodes of this show, and I think they did such a good job of tying up this story that was obviously going to be going on for more than 2 seasons, but they had to finish it up. And so things can feel at times a little rushed, but I think where the story ends with our characters is really heartwarming and satisfying. And I can't lie, I got a lump in my throat near the very end of this show, kind of seeing all these characters together and seeing a pretty satisfying ending that I did really genuinely enjoy. So, is Resistance a great tier show that can stand with the Clone Wars and Rebels? No, it's not as good as those shows, but it never had to be, because it's a completely different show, different people working on it, and you know what? Those people did a good job. They did an admirable job, and it is not as bad as people say. It isn't even bad. It's just standard, maybe not as ambitious as the previous 2 shows, but overall, I enjoyed my time with Resistance. I think it's a fun time. It's an enjoyable show, but I can say that I'm probably never going to be revisiting it. It's just not something that will probably stick with me. It's probably going to get thrown to the wayside. People are sadly maybe going to forget this show, and I don't think they should. I think this is still an important part of Star Wars, as anything that comes out is an important part of Star Wars. And I enjoyed my time. I love the voice cast. I love the animation it did warm up on me. But overall, a pretty basic show that has some great moments. So anyway, guys, with all that said, I'm going to give Star Wars Resistance a 7 out of 10. Well, guys, I want to thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you guys in the next review.